Thank you, all of you. We have a great panel before us today. All right, with that, I'm going to start with Ms. Kline.
Thank you, Chair Richardson. Good morning, Senator Durazo. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. My name is Lorin Kline. I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Legal Aid Association of California. We represent the statewide network of legal aid nonprofits, 3 of which you'll hear from today. The state has a long history of funding civil legal aid. The Equal Access Fund in the judicial branch budget was created in 1999 at $10 million and has grown to $40 million annually. It funds a wide array of legal services statewide that help people manage critical life issues, from keeping people housed and fed to helping families access health care and benefits. You'll hear more about this work from my fellow panelists. The state also has a history of making targeted additional investments in legal services, all of which have originated in the legislature, for which we are very grateful. In 2019, the legislature added $20 million to the Equal Access Fund as other funding sources waned. In 2022, you added $15 million for consumer debt legal services as the pandemic took its economic toll on families. From 2019 to 2024, the state funded homelessness prevention legal services to help keep families housed amidst a growing housing crisis. And finally, in 2024, during the special legislative session, the state provided $10 million to serve people that were impacted by federal policy changes. None of these one-time investments remain. This comes, unfortunately, at a time of unprecedented need. Families are struggling with housing, with access to health care, and with navigating our social safety net. That's why we're asking for 3 critical investments at this time. First, a one-time addition of $50 million to the Equal Access Fund to meet demand. Second, $20 million to restart proven homelessness prevention services. And third, $10 million for services to protect access to health care as federal changes threaten Medi-Cal for millions. We're also here in strong support of the investments requested by the California Access to Justice Commission, which you will hear about shortly. With this funding, legal aid can, for example, represent an immigrant who has been detained and ensure that the detainee's dependent children are cared for, and represent the remaining members of the household when they can no longer make rent. Equal access funds have the flexibility to allow a proven network of service providers to holistically address the enormous and ever-shifting need. We understand and appreciate that California faces a budget crisis, but strategic investment in legal aid is not only the right thing to do, it's fiscally smart. The Federal Legal Services Corporation analyzed 56 studies over 20 years and found that legal aid returns $7 for every $1 invested. In San Francisco, another study found that preventing someone's homelessness with legal aid costs $6,000 or less. Sheltering that same person costs $60,000 annually, not counting law enforcement and healthcare costs. This isn't about choosing between fiscal responsibility and fairness. Legal aid delivers both. These strategic investments will strengthen communities, reduce long-term costs, and ensure that no Californian is left behind simply because they cannot afford an attorney. Thank you.
And now for the Judge of California, Mr. Tapia.
Good morning, Senator Richardson, Senator Durazo. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I have the privilege of serving as the presiding judge of the Superior Court of Los Angeles County. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you alongside our legal partners who all share a deep commitment to expanding access to justice, particularly in unlawful detainer and/or eviction cases. At the heart of our justice system is a fundamental promise: equal access to justice for all. Yet last year alone, more than 37,000 eviction cases were filed in our court. That basically translates to approximately 1 every 14 minutes per court day. Behind each of these filings is a person or a family navigating a complex, unfamiliar, and deeply consequential process. Excuse me. These realities compelled us as a court to look inward and ask incredibly difficult but necessary questions. Where do barriers exist? Who is being left behind? And how can we close the gap between the justice we promise and the justice we deliver? Over the past 2 years, we've made significant investments in our data infrastructure to better understand our docket and serve our community. As part of this effort, we have begun publishing non-confidential data, including a new public dashboard that provides insight into unlawful detainers filings by zip code and year, as well as overall trends over time. This tool is designed to promote transparency, enhance public understanding, and more importantly, support more informed policymaking. To deepen this work, we partnered with Stanford Law School to analyze more than 150,000 unlawful detainer filings and to gather feedback from court users and community organizations. This collaboration yielded 3 key findings. First, tenant participation remains strikingly low. A significant number of tenants never answer their unlawful detainer complaint. For instance, in 2023, 32% of all eviction cases in our court resulted in default judgment. Second, many tenants reported that they were either not properly served or did not fully understand the summons, complaint, or unlawful detainer notice, which is essential to protecting their rights. Third, representation is profoundly imbalanced. In 2023, only 13% of tenants had legal counsel, compared to 92% of landlords. Together, these findings highlight systematic barriers that limit meaningful access to justice. Importantly, our partnership with Stanford did more than diagnose the problem. It provided an actionable blueprint for addressing these challenges with practical, targeted solutions. One immediate step was to redesign our court notices to make critical information clearer and more accessible. Each notice is now tailored to the individual defendant and includes plain language explanations, a clear call to action, and direct connections to self-help resources. We reinforce these improvements with targeted text messaging, providing defendants with timely reminders and direct links to the court's new updated website. Access to counsel remains one of the most significant factors influencing the outcomes of an eviction case. The data consistently show that tenants with legal representation are far more likely to remain housed and to reach fair, sustainable resolutions. Through our partnerships with legal aid organizations such as the Shriver Housing Project and Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles, we have provided free legal representation to more than 19,000 low-income litigants. Even so, the demand for these services continues to exceed our capacity. Last year, we convened an eviction diversion roundtable to work collaboratively with city and county partners on strategies to resolve cases earlier before they reach trial by leveraging rental assistance and mediation. I am pleased to share that we are now piloting eviction diversion programs in Compton and at the Stanley Mosque Courthouse. At Stanley Mosque, we launched a settlement-focused pilot in March that directs limited jurisdiction cases into same-day mandatory settlement conferences before trial, while also connecting tenants to the We Are LA program, a Mayor's Fund of Los Angeles initiative that provides legal assistance to tenants facing eviction. And beginning Monday in Compton, we are launching a new program in partnership with the Los Angeles County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. This effort pairs mediation with rental assistance to help stabilize tenants while ensuring that landlords are made whole. Together, these pilots aim to resolve cases earlier, reduce the need for trial, and promote fair and equitable outcomes for all parties. With continued collaboration and sustained investment in these strategies, data transparency, clearer communication, expanded access to counsel, and targeted diversion programs, I am confident we can build a court system that is more accessible, more effective, and more just for all who come before it. I would like to thank you for your leadership and for your commitment to elevating this critical issue. With that, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Now you know why he's my favorite. Next, we're going to have Ms. Kate Marr.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kate Marr, and I'm the Executive Director at Community Legal Aid SoCal. We are the program that is going to be running that eviction diversion program in Compton, so we're very excited about that. I'm a proud legal aid lifer, spending the last 25 plus years working in legal services, and I've seen firsthand how legal aid changes families' lives and improves communities. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit about that with you today. I'm going to focus on what investing in legal aid looks like on the ground, specifically when it comes to homelessness prevention and support for domestic violence survivors. You heard from Judge Tapia about the homelessness crisis in LA County, and we all know it's a huge issue across the state. But the data shows us that more people each year are becoming unhoused than are rehoused. And so what that means is that upstream prevention-focused solutions are critical to solving the homelessness epidemic in California. And civil legal aid is one of the most cost-effective homelessness prevention tools. Preventing homelessness requires addressing a multitude of factors that can lead to it: domestic violence, loss of income or benefits, consumer debt, barriers to employment or housing like criminal records, unsafe or unstable housing, and lack of support navigating social safety net programs. At Community Legal Aid SoCal and at our sister organizations across the state, our approach is proactive and coordinated. We provide legal support across multiple areas and combine it with case management so that families receive the help they need before problems lead to eviction or housing loss. At my organization, housing instability is the top legal issue that clients come to us with. Eviction, illegal rent increases, and unsafe conditions can push a family into homelessness quickly, often before they understand their rights. And as Judge Tapia shared, representation matters, and it is so imbalanced in eviction court. And this imbalance often leads to default judgments, avoidable evictions, and families losing their housing even when defenses or protections exist under California law. And I'm going to repeat this many times: legal aid is homelessness prevention, early intervention, preserving subsidies, enforcing habitability laws, stopping unlawful lockouts and utility shutoffs, and negotiating solutions keeps people housed and reduces downstream public costs. And I'm going to share a story. We had a widowed senior client who received a 60-day eviction notice from her landlord. She suspected that he wanted to raise the rent for a new tenant. Our housing team stepped in, conducted discovery, prepared her defenses, and readied the case for trial. But just days before trial, the landlord dismissed the case entirely because of the work that our housing team had done, and our client was able to remain in her home. These are exactly the kinds of cases that are supported by the state's civil legal aid investments, and why restoring stable funding is so important as the need continues to rise. And we already have evidence here in California that legal aid works to prevent homelessness. Between 2019 and 2024, state-funded homelessness prevention legal services, and that's money that sunsetted and has not been restored, stabilized housing for nearly 200,000 Californians. It prevented 14,500 evictions, recovered $37 million for low-income tenants, and saved $31 million through waived rent and reduced debt. So my background is working with survivors of domestic violence, and we know that domestic violence is a major driver of the homelessness crisis in California. At our organization, approximately 1/3 of our clients report that they have experienced domestic violence. Studies show that as many as 57% of homeless women report domestic violence as the immediate cause of their homelessness, and 80% of unhoused women with children report having experienced domestic violence. Survivors are more likely to be unsheltered, which increases exposure to further violence and trauma. For survivors, unfortunately, the choice is often staying with an abuser or becoming unhoused. But California law provides strong protections. Survivors can stop evictions that are tied to abuse. They can break leases without penalty. They can remove abusers from leases or obtain restraining orders that stabilize housing. But they cannot access those protections without legal help. Civil legal aid helps survivors act fast to get protection, stabilize housing, and keep children connected to school and care. I have another client story for you. We had a mother who fled severe domestic violence with her 4 children, and she reached a confidential shelter, but her abuser was able to track her down, forcing the family to relocate again. Her request for a restraining order was denied initially, leaving them at continued risk and making housing stability even harder. Through our shelter partnership, we helped her appeal and present updated evidence. The court ultimately granted a 3-year restraining order, and it was an essential step towards safety and housing stability. So in closing, I just want to repeat again, legal aid is a proven cost-effective intervention. When the state invests in legal services, we prevent avoidable evictions, help survivors reach safety faster, and reduce the higher costs that otherwise fall on shelters, emergency rooms, courts, and schools. And as you weigh very difficult budget decisions in a difficult budget year, I urge you to restore and sustain civil legal aid funding so that California's safety net works as intended. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'm happy to take questions later.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Solorzano. Sorry.
It's all right, no worries. Good morning, and thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Tessie Solorzano, and I am the Executive Director at Inland County's Legal Services. I'm here to share what civil aid looks like on the ground, including some impactful client stories, as well as the one-time investments made on behalf of the California Access to Justice Commission for specific projects. So first, for a bit of background, Inland County's Legal Services is a nonprofit organization founded in 1958 that provides free civil legal services to persons with low income and seniors aged 60 and over throughout Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Yes, end-to-end, frontier to more urban areas. That is our joy, to be able to provide civil legal services there. Our attorneys and advocates help residents with housing rights, consumer protections, family law, senior legal issues, access to healthcare and public benefits, and others. We use a holistic intake process so that when a family comes to us with one civil legal issue, we are able to triage, identify what the family truly needs to be able to be stable in their housing, in their income, in their benefits, to feel safety in their home, and provide that wraparound service to the individual and to the families. Now, Lorin referenced our homeless prevention funding, and I wanted to share a really impactful story for an individual that came to us back in 2022. This was made possible through our homelessness prevention funding, and in particular, a special partnership that we were able to have with the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. This individual is a 61-year-old homeless man, a veteran who needed assistance applying for SSI and SSDI. Through our assistance, through our advocacy, through the connection and partnership made possible through that homelessness prevention funding, the individual was ultimately approved for SSDI benefits in $2,596 monthly, as well as a retroactive benefits of a life-changing amount of $63,000. This person went from being unhoused, a veteran, a senior, to being able to stabilize, identify housing, be able to provide for himself. And that is just one example of the many that has also been shared by the team in terms of homelessness prevention and the impact. Now, LAC reports that State Bar-funded legal aid organizations recovered nearly $544 million for clients in 2024 and obtained almost $350 million more in debt reduction and avoided costs. And this is even while turning away large numbers of eligible clients due to a lack of capacity. Now, Judge Tapia had referenced eviction and homelessness, and legal aid is truly homelessness prevention. We recently had a senior, 76 years old, who was facing an $80 rent increase. Reasonable in terms of the landlord and other protections. However, the housing authority was refusing to allow that $80 increase so that way she could remain housed, stay close to her family networks, as well as her medical providers. So in this situation, Inland County's Legal Services was able to go advocate on behalf of that client, see it as a reasonable accommodation, and get that $80 increase approved as a reasonable accommodation for that 76-year-old senior. Had it not been for us, she would have unfortunately gone through the eviction process with the 90-day notice that had already been served. Legal aid truly is homelessness prevention. Now, this work is not possible without the dedication of talented attorneys, paralegals, and frontline staff. And it is truly an honor to be able to also represent the California Access to Justice Commission that I'm a commissioner of, to be able to make these one-time asks, as the commission truly focuses on supporting legal aid infrastructure and organization in particular. So for 30 years, the California Access to Justice Commission has been one of the state's most important tools for responding to the justice gap crisis by expanding legal resources, removing barriers, and supporting innovation. There are 3 targeted asks from the California Access to Justice Commission. The first is legal aid loan repayment assistance, in particular providing that safety net for new legal aid attorneys who might lose federal public service loan forgiveness under federal rules. Now, without the support, uncertainty about student loan relief will drive talented advocates out of legal aid at the very moment when California's justice gap is widening. There are 5,000 income-eligible Californians for every 1 legal aid attorney in our state. This is the data from 2023, which is astounding. 30% of new attorneys to civil legal aid leave within 3 years. 92% of them may leave within 2 years. Recruitment and retention is a true challenge, particularly as expertise is required to be able to litigate these cases, complexity of which knows no limits in terms of income, and it is imperative to be able to retain our talented staff. Now, the second request is the assistance for immigrant parents across the state and pre-authorization for caregivers through a project under AB 495, the Family Preparedness Act of 2025, so that way law libraries and pro bono attorneys are able to provide the assistance to families that may come into law libraries. And part of this model is particularly unique. It is important to be able to reach civil legal services in the community that you live in and participate in. Not everybody can access things virtually, particularly in a rural situation. And so a law library does become a fountain for connection and to be able to receive the assistance and guidance that you may need. This particular request would go directly towards that, to stabilizing families and ensuring that sudden detention or deportation doesn't mean a child loses access to school, medical, or a stable home. And then the third one is an additional $5 million for the Legal Aid Innovation Structure Grants, which is an expansion of current innovation and infrastructure grants. ICLS was able to receive one of these grants previously, and so just to share an example of the key work that is supported by these grants, we created a self-help video library, and it launched last year. Since then, we've had over 7,000 views of our videos, the highest ones being child support and family law in particular. These types of innovation grants are generally unachievable without these types of special supports. And in particularly at a time when folks are unfortunately concerned about going out into the community to receive direct legal services, at least they're able to do it virtually or receive self-help through these video online libraries. Again, just as an example. Now, you've heard from our colleagues regarding the return on investment for communities. These are real dollars kept in households throughout Riverside and San Bernardino counties, as well as throughout the state. These are dollars that help pay rent, keep lights on, and support local businesses instead of being lost to fraud, illegal evictions, or bureaucratic errors. Inland County's Legal Services sees on the daily how targeted legal help can stabilize a family and protect public investments. When we stop an unlawful eviction, we also avoid the cost of shelter, emergency room visits, and school disruption. When we help a senior straighten out a Medicare or Medi-Cal problem, we prevent more expensive crises down the line. When we help a small business resolve a contract or licensing issue, we preserve jobs, local tax revenue, and help uplift somebody to creating their own business and being empowered. It is incredible work, and I thank you again for the opportunity to speak today and welcome any questions.
Much. Lastly, we have before us Ms. Siobhan Waldron.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Richardson and Senator Durazo. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today about why funding legal representation for families with a loved one in immigration detention is not only the right thing to do, but also a smart budget decision for this state. When a person is detained, the harm does not stop with that individual. Very often, the people that are left behind are U.S. citizen spouses, children, parents, and entire communities who suddenly lose a caregiver, a breadwinner, a transportation provider, and an emotional anchor. Immigration detention is not just one person's crisis. For example, our office represents Marta and Javier, who were taken by ICE in Southern California while working last year, leaving behind their 4 U.S. citizen children, ages 9 to 22 years old. Their 22-year-old son suffers from very serious mental health issues, and their 19-year-old daughter had to quit her nursing studies and begin working to try and pay the bills and care for the family. Their 16-year-old daughter also had to start working to try and keep the household afloat and make rent. Marta and Javier's 9-year-old son was struggling, and his school wanted to move forward with an IEP to address his needs, but they couldn't due to the absence of a legal guardian. We represented each Marta and Javier in filing a habeas petition and in their subsequent bond hearings that were ordered by the district court. After 3 months of detention, fortunately, they were reunited with their children, and the children could return to focus on their studies, and the family found stability. But without counsel, they would have been swiftly deported and the family permanently separated. There is a moral reason for investment in representation of individuals detained by ICE. No child should lose the stability, safety, or the support of a parent because that parent is forced to navigate one of the country's most complex legal systems alone simply because they couldn't afford an attorney. And similarly, no person should face prolonged detention and separation from their family and community simply because they couldn't afford an attorney. And this is not only a moral issue, it's a practical and economic one. When a detained parent or spouse unnecessarily loses their immigration case because they had no help, the costs don't disappear, they just shift. Rent and bills go unpaid, children need more school-based supports, families who were previously self-supporting can become dependent on public benefits and overstretched nonprofit systems. There's significant downstream costs. So in other words, when representation is missing on the front end, the state often pays more on the back end. A modest investment in counsel can prevent far more expensive state interventions later. And importantly, representation does not mean special treatment. It means meaningful access to justice. It means decisions are made on the merits when the facts are properly presented by an attorney. Representation helps bring fairness, due process, and clarity to an otherwise chaotic and terrifying process. If this committee is looking for investments that both reflect compassion and fiscal responsibility, funding detained immigrant representation should be very high on the list. So I urge you to continue to fund representation for families and communities impacted by ICE detention. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all of your presentations. Senator Durazo.
Thank you. You are all my heroes. I just love, just appreciate all that you do every day. It's so important. Our favorite judge, Judge Tapia. Thank you so much for the work around the evictions and the eviction data. I'm just, if you can describe a little bit more how the courts have improved the data collection over time,
Sure.
Specifically the eviction data.
So I can speak to what we do in Los Angeles, but I think it's important to understand something. all courts across California have case management systems, and you can call them data collection systems. However, their intended purpose is to manage caseloads. In LA County, our case management system's purpose is to manage the over 1.3 million filings we get every year. The challenge is trying to extract that data. We have been very fortunate in Los Angeles that we have a professional team in place we've invested in to basically pull that data from our case management system and make it something that the public can see. If you go to our website at www.lacourt.ca.gov, you will see our dashboard, eviction dashboard, which has all of these important data points. We've had to invest a significant amount of money to make that happen. So in order for us to be able to do it, it's required two things. You need a professional team in place to be able to extract the data, and obviously you need money to fund that team and the process and the systems to be able to accomplish it. So what we have been able to do in LA County, and I invite you to go to our website and the eviction data dashboard, you will find that we have refined the data to the zip code. I can tell you right now where the hotspots in LA County are. A county of over 10 million people, the two hotspots in LA County, based on the data we've collected, exist in Hollywood and Pasadena. You would think it would be other communities, but the data proves out that the two biggest places with the most evictions, Hollywood and Pasadena. That is information that is incredibly valuable to individuals at the city, county, and obviously at the state level to be able to target funding to these areas. That is how refined we've been able to get our data so we can try to target these particular communities. We've been able to use that data to go, for instance, to members of the Board of Supervisors that represent these districts to show them the information. We share the information so that when they make decisions, fiscal decisions about where to invest, hopefully it informs that decision. But it is not an easy task. And I hope that this committee appreciates that. We've been very fortunate in LA. I can't say that for our sister courts where the challenge is much greater, especially when it comes to refining the data to the point that we've got it. It is possible, but it's going to require significant investment.
Just going along those lines, I assume when I ask you about what potential barriers or what barriers you faced, funding is one of those. Anything else, or what would you identify that made it difficult?
Well,
made it easier.
At the heart of it is funding.
Let's do both sides of it.
At the heart of it is funding, but one of the things that we've done, and I mentioned our project with Stanford Law School, we also have partnerships with the RAND Corporation, UCLA, the Claremont Colleges, and we've entered into agreements with them to share our data so that they can help us refine the data to make it actionable. Our partnership with RAND is a good example. We are not having to pay for it. They've willingly partnered with us. They are investing a significant amount of money on their end to help us make our data more actionable. So we are trying to find and leverage these partnerships where we don't have to ask for money. But at the end of the day, money is what will drive whether or not we are able to make this an even better product.
And has going through this process helped the overall court operations? Is there any, is there anything that you learned or done that has helped the court operations be more successful?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it helps us figure out where we need to send our limited staff resources. We can target our staff resources into certain communities. I mean, Senator Richardson has visited our self-help center in Compton. That is a perfect example of where data helps us decide how many staff members do we need at that Compton self-help center based on the number of filings, not just within that courthouse, but refine it down to specific case types. In this situation, we're talking about evictions. Hence the reason why we've partnered with the county to do that eviction pilot program at the Compton courthouse. That is how data has helped us target our very limited resources. And I must emphasize, they are limited because we are severely underfunded.
And have you found ways to share that beyond in your case, the LA County with other counties or the other courts?
So I'll answer this in two ways. We share what we can that is not confidential. That data is on our website. So it's there for anyone to look at. But as I mentioned earlier, we have these partnerships with these entities that are helping us look at that data in different ways, because traditionally courts have been very reluctant to let outsiders look at what we do. We have taken a very different approach in a very responsible way to get input from professionals, academics that may understand the issues a lot better. In terms of how we share it, what we've been able to do is, using that information, we have built systems that are built on a platform that allows us to share whatever systems we create with our sister courts. That is something that we are truly invested in, because LA feels a responsibility to the entire state to make sure that we provide the support that they need. Because I'm a firm believer that when it comes to the issue of building trust and confidence in our justice system, for the member of the public, it doesn't matter if they're appearing in a court in Butte County, Orange County, or LA County, they're viewing the system as a whole. And we feel a responsibility to use what we've been doing to help our sister courts, because if we can help that litigant in Butte County, in Siskiyou County, or any other county, it's going to help the system as a whole. That's the way I would answer your question about
That's great.
sharing.
And I would hope that other counties would take advantage of the help that you could give, or the lessons that you learned, share them, whatever practices, systems.
They have, and they do. However, as I mentioned earlier, every court, especially smaller courts, are limited by their infrastructure. We can share data, we can share systems, but if they don't have the money or just the operation to be able to use it, it makes it very challenging.
Okay. Just a question for, I don't know if they're available or how we can ask questions to the Department of Finance and Judicial Council. They can come up, okay. Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you all, but I have another list of questions that I hope I could give to you, and then you could respond another day. Can you describe the tasks required to produce data on civil case filings?
Mark Jimenez, Department
That's with Judicial Council? Yeah.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll switch up. Musical first.
Hello.
Good morning, Senators. Zlatko Theodorovich from the Judicial Council. I don't think we'll be able to answer to your questions now. We'll most definitely take them back and come back to the committee with responses.
Okay.
And the first question, I don't have detail on how the steps are for data collection.
The second one is about what are your most recent cost estimates for modernizing the Superior Court system, and how would efforts to modernize support the efforts to collect civil case filings? So you have those verbally. I have some more for you right here. Just happen to have them. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just have for legal aid, I think you all made an incredible presentation here as to prevention of homelessness. Research indicates that people with legal counsel are 5 times more likely to obtain the protections they're eligible for than those without a lawyer. With federal immigration rates elevated, what's the current demand for immigration legal services and for deportation defense? I know you made reference to that. Somebody?
For our office, I can speak. For immigrant legal defense, the demand is through the roof. It is absolutely through the roof. We provide a lot of services, and we do everything we can, but we, of course, can't represent everyone. As the data presented by my colleagues show earlier, there's not enough attorneys to meet the need in the community. But as you mentioned, the raids, the enforcement is off the charts, therefore the need is off the charts. And no, we cannot currently meet it.
And I would just add to that, that it's not only new demand for services, but cases that seemed simple in earlier times have become much more complex and are taking a lot more work and energy and time.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm sorry, Senator, I also have a bit to add as well. Just at least in terms of statistically, there is one attorney for every approximately 50,000 to 55,000 individuals that are in need of immigration assistance. So that statistic is much more dire than the earlier one that I had referenced. But additionally, it is taking a lot of staff time, not just because of the increased need, but also the increased need for oversight and attendance at what used to be routine visits are now requiring attorneys to be present, not just for the client to ensure their safety and security, but as well if they are unfortunately detained or removed during that just used to be routine check-in.
That's partially what you mean by the more complicated. And then what would it take in permanent baseline funding for the Equal Access Fund to close the justice gap in civil and deportation?
I don't have an exact number that I can give you. I can tell you that the State Bar of California just conducted a justice gap study, a legal needs study, which found that statewide, more than 80% of people don't get adequate legal assistance for their problems. Some of their problem goes unmet. So I can tell you that the investments that we're requesting today would not come close to touching the gap itself. It would make a big difference, but the gap remains very large.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. A couple questions and requests. One, if you could provide to my office the info of what you're going to be doing the program in Compton, so I can read about it and also share it with the community. Number two, I'm going to give you a little homework. For legal aid, if you could provide for us a list of all the services that you provide. And if you would also, if you could do an overlap map of where your locations are according to our Senate districts, so we could provide to the senators to say, here are the services that are offered, here are the locations in your district, so you can share this with your constituents. That's the deal I'm gonna make. Then, because of that, we need to find some money. And you should know, probably one of the most important people in the building are the staff, because I think Nora sets me up sometimes. She puts things before us to educate us, and then I go, I'm listening, and then she knows my next question is going to be, well, can we take money from here to here? So it's really important to work with the staff and our consultants. If you don't know that, that's a very important key. So I want to build on the question that Senator Durazo had, and I heard a couple amounts mentioned. What is the amount of money that you're requesting?
We're requesting 3 separate investments. First, a $50 million one-time
50?
50 addition to the Equal Access Fund. So that would be funding that would serve the entire state, the entire range of legal issues. Then we're requesting $20 million to restart the homelessness prevention program. That would cover services that prevent homelessness, anything from representing folks in evictions to helping maintain income. And then lastly, $10 million for services to protect healthcare access.
Okay, so we do have quite a lot of funding related to homelessness. So you're saying that you don't have access to those dollars because it's probably restricted to specific housing and so on, but that might be something we can look at from policy language to allow some of that funding to be included from a legal representation perspective. So we'll take a look at that. The $50 million, can you give us a little more detail? That's a good amount of money. If you could give us more detail of where you came up with that number and how those dollars would be used.
Sure.
Okay.
In terms of how the dollars are used, the Equal Access Fund distributes funds by a formula based on poverty population. So the funding goes all over the state to every county based on how many low-income people are there. So that's how the funding gets used. In terms of where we got that $50 million number, another very primary source of funding for legal aid is IOLTA, which stands for Interest on Lawyer Trust Accounts. The legislature created this system. The legislature doesn't fund it directly. Essentially, any funds that a lawyer puts in a trust account for a client, the interest that is generated goes to legal aid. That amount is obviously volatile. It depends on interest rates. We anticipate that over the next 2 years, IOLTA will drop by $50 million, which is how we came to that number. Because as I said, the gap is much, much larger than that.
So is that in 2 years or is that now?
In 2 years. Over the course of 2 years, we anticipate that IOLTA funds will drop $50 million.
So currently you're budgeted by these IOTA funds? Is that what?
Yes. All the organizations that are funded by the Equal Access Fund also receive IOLTA funding.
Okay. So what do you need though now? I mean, you're anticipating this is going to go down, but is your number now 50 or you're just projecting what you expect you're going to need?
This is how we
Tell me the truth.
We expect to need much more than that. So $50 million seemed like a fair and concrete amount based on how we anticipate the IOLTA funds will go down. But as I said, the need is very rapidly increasing. So even if IOLTA wasn't going down at all, $50 million could be very quickly put to use, still leaving some justice gap.
Okay. My next question is, do you provide information on parental visitation and divorce proceedings and all of that? Do you guys support that work?
That would depend on each individual organization. I don't know if the organizations present can share.
Both of our, Tessie and myself, both of our organizations do provide support around family law issues.
Okay, because I get a lot of questions about that. Child support and all that. Okay.
And our office also runs the Compton Self-Help Center where we do a lot of that work.
Okay, thank you. And were you previously receiving federal funding? And if so, has that gone down at all?
Yes. I'll specifically address the homelessness prevention funding first. That program has been funded by a few different sources between 2019 and 2024, one of which was American Rescue Plan Act dollars. So that's part of what funded the homelessness prevention services that have now gone away. In terms of the organizations in the statewide network and federal funding, very many of those organizations have lost federal funding sources in the past 2 years, or they have had sources that suddenly don't cover the types of services that they used to cover. So yes, the answer is yes. Loss in federal funding is huge.
Do you know about how much, what we're talking about, what the implication is?
It's hard to arrive at a specific number, although we have attempted to do so because so many things remain in flux. There's litigation challenging many funding cuts, but we anticipate that, or we estimate that it's somewhere in the ballpark of $160 million just in the first year of the Trump presidency that was lost for legal aid organizations in California.
Okay, make sure you put that in writing. Because there will be another day one day. We need to make sure we follow up on where we lost money. A question for the Immigration Center. Where are you located?
Our office is located in Oakland, but we provide services statewide. So specifically, two of our major programs are one where we serve 9 different California State University campuses, providing free services to staff, student, and faculty there. And also we serve community colleges throughout the state. And we have a lot of other programs, but we reach nearly every county.
Okay. And how do you reach out to other ethnic organizations to let them know about your services? I get questions. I'm a part of the Legislative Black Caucus, and I get a lot of questions about, our chair in particular mentions about some of the individuals from African countries and so on, the diaspora, Haitian. We have a lot in Los Angeles, Ethiopian. My district in Carson, we have a lot of Nigerian. So do you have a way that you outreach to other ethnic groups, or how do you outreach to share the immigration services that are available?
We provide a lot of community education, one aside from the specific projects I mentioned, for example. So of course, through the schools, people that are accessing schools. We don't only serve students, but also faculty, staff, and families. So that is a big way. All types of ethnic groups and communities access community colleges throughout the state of California. So that's one way we reach all different types of populations. But also we provide a lot of community education, webinars, other informational seminars, and we also do a significant amount of mentoring. So we work to mentor attorneys throughout the state, particularly in underserved areas like the Central Valley, the Central Coast, and through our very kind of different reaches in the community, we serve people all throughout the globe. Our data does reflect that we serve the demographics of California, but of course our services aren't limited to any certain ethnic group, and we have access to interpretation in any language on demand. So language access isn't an issue for accessing our services.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little homework also. If you could share with us whatever outreach materials that you have to all different groups, so that members who are in different communities can also share that information as well. Yeah.
Gladly.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no further questions, that's going to conclude our issue number 3. We really appreciate all of you coming, and we'll certainly be following up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to turn to issue number 4.